Tessa Briggs stood in the arrivals bay of Iron Forge Moon Base, staring up at a ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity. Metal girders crisscrossed overhead like the skeleton of some massive beast, and the air smelled like recycled oxygen mixed with cleaning solution, and something she couldn't quite identify. Probably alien sweat, if aliens even sweated. Her duffel bag hung off one shoulder, containing everything she owned that mattered, which wasn't much. Around her, the other recruits were filing in, and, oh boy, what a collection they were! To her left, a Crexian towered at roughly 9 feet tall, scales gleaming like polished emeralds under the harsh fluorescent lights. It's his? Her? Breathing sounded like gravel being crushed in a cement mixer. To her right, something that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and bad decisions shuffled past on 6 legs. 4 arms hung from its torso, each one ending in 3-fingered hands that clicked and clacked as it moved. An Olmoth, if her obsessive studying was correct. Further down the line, a being made entirely of what appeared to be living crystal caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. Hicks warrior had to be. They were supposed to be the fastest species in the coalition, capable of moving so quickly they blurred at the edges. And then there was Tessa, 5'4", 120 pounds, soaking wet. Brown hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail that was already coming loose. She'd been told she had an expressive face, which was polite code for, "You look like you're constantly 3 seconds away from making a sarcastic comment." Which, to be fair, she usually was. "Listen up!" Tessa's head snapped toward the voice before her brain even processed the words. Military instinct, maybe, or just survival reflex. Either way, every recruit in the bay went silent. Gunnery Sergeant Holloway stood on a raised platform at the far end of the arrivals area, and even from a distance, Tessa could tell he was carved from the same material as the moon base itself. All hard angles and 0 give. He was human, which surprised her for exactly half a second before she remembered that humans had been in the coalition for almost 2 decades now. Long enough to climb the ranks. Long enough to forget where they came from, apparently. "You are now the property of the Intergalactic Defense Coalition," Holloway announced, his voice carrying across the bay without need for amplification. Must have had some kind of vocal augmentation surgery. "For the next 6 months, you will eat when I tell you, sleep when I tell you, and breathe when I tell you. Your previous lives are irrelevant. Your species is irrelevant. Your feelings?" He paused, and Tessa swore she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Are especially irrelevant." A few nervous clicks and chirps rippled through the assembled recruits. Tessa kept her face neutral, but inside, a tiny voice was already whispering that this guy was going to be a problem. "You are here because your governments, your councils, your hive minds, or whatever the hell runs your homeworlds decided you were worthy of joining the finest military force in known space," Holloway continued. He began pacing along the platform, boots ringing against metal with each step. "I am here to prove them wrong." Oh, good, Tessa thought. A motivational speaker. "Look to your left," Holloway commanded. Tessa looked. The Crexian was looking back at her, its amber eyes unblinking and unsettling. "Look to your right." She turned. The multi-armed Olmoth had shifted its body to face her direction, though she wasn't entirely sure which end was its front. "Chances are, one of you won't make it through the first month," Holloway said cheerfully. "Statistics say 3 of you will wash out by month 3, and if you're very lucky, maybe half of you will actually graduate." He stopped pacing, stood perfectly still in the center of the platform, let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, then pushed it a little further, just because he could. "But let's be honest," he said, and his eyes began scanning the crowd. "Some of you don't stand a chance." Tessa felt his gaze land on her before she saw it. It was like being pinned under a microscope. She met his stare, kept her expression blank, and absolutely did not look away first. "Big mistake. You," Holloway pointed directly at her. "Front and center. Now." Every eye in the bay turned to watch as Tessa made her way through the crowd. The other recruits parted like she was contagious. Maybe she was. Maybe stupidity was transmissible, because only an idiot would have maintained eye contact with a drill sergeant on day one. She stopped at the base of the platform, tilted her head back to meet Holloway's gaze. Up close, she could see the scars crossing his face, thin white lines that spoke of close calls and near misses. His eyes were gray, cold, and completely devoid of anything resembling mercy. "State your name and homeworld," he said. "Tessa Briggs, Earth, Sol System." "Tessa Briggs, from Earth," Holloway repeated, somehow making her name sound like an insult. "Tell me, Tessa Briggs from Earth, why did you join the Coalition military?" Standard question. She'd prepared for this. To serve, Gunnery Sergeant. To protect Coalition interests and— Wrong. Holloway cut her off with the casual brutality of someone swatting a fly. "You joined because you wanted adventure, glory. Maybe you wanted to prove something to someone back home. Maybe you watched too many propaganda vids and thought it looked exciting." He leaned forward, and Tessa caught the scent of coffee and something sharper. Anger, maybe, or just general disdain. "Let me educate you on some facts," Holloway said, pitching his voice to carry across the entire bay. "Humans are the newest species in the Coalition. Barely 20 years. You know what we were doing 20 years ago? Killing each other over lines on maps and whose imaginary friend was better? We're primitive. We're emotional. We're physically inferior to almost every other member species." Tessa's jaw clenched. She forced it to relax. "You see that Krexian over there?" Holloway gestured toward the scaled giant. "Brock could tear you in half without breaking a sweat. That Ulmoth? Kix can process tactical information at 4 times your speed with 4 times your limbs to execute it. And don't even get me started on Lux over there. That Hicks warrior could run circles around you so fast you'd think there were a dozen of them." He straightened up, crossed his arms over his chest. "So tell me, Tessa Briggs from Earth, what exactly do you bring to this table? What's your edge? Your advantage?" Tessa considered her options. She could give him the answer he wanted. Some humble platitude about determination, or heart, or whatever. She could shut up and take the abuse. Or she could be honest. "I read the manual," she said. Holloway blinked. "Excuse me?" "The training manual. All 6,000 pages. Also the tactical database, the species compatibility guides, and the complete service history of the Coalition military, going back to its founding." Tessa shrugged. Figured it might come in handy. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Holloway laughed, a sharp barking sound that had zero humor in it. "She read the manual," he announced to the assembled recruits. "Outstanding, truly inspiring. I'm sure when Brock is ripping enemy combatants apart with his bare claws, he'll be real impressed that you can quote regulations at him." A few scattered laughs from the crowd. Tessa's face heated, but she kept her expression neutral. "Let me make something crystal clear," Holloway said, and now all traces of amusement were gone from his voice. "You will never be a soldier. You lack the physical capability. You lack the mental fortitude. And most importantly, you lack the killer instinct that separates actual warriors from children playing dress-up in military uniforms. He gestured toward the exit. You can leave right now. There's no shame in it. Go back to Earth, get a nice, safe job, live a long, boring, utterly meaningless life. Or, he paused, you can stay here and let me prove to you exactly how inadequate you are. Your choice. Tessa didn't move, didn't blink, didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Still here. Holloway shook his head in mock disappointment. Fine. Get back in formation. But when you wash out, and you will wash out, remember that I gave you an out, and you were too stubborn to take it. Tessa returned to her spot in the crowd. The Crexian, Brock apparently, gave her what might have been a sympathetic look, though it was hard to tell with the whole reptilian face situation. The Ulmoth's multiple eyes tracked her movement with unsettling precision, and just like that, Tessa knew. This wasn't going to be about proving herself. This was going to be about surviving a man who'd already decided she was worthless. Fun times ahead. Boot camp, as it turned out, was exactly as terrible as advertised, only with more creative torture methods than Tessa had anticipated. Day 1 started at 0400 hours, with Holloway literally kicking open the barracks door and screaming at them to get their sorry carcasses onto the training field in under 3 minutes. Tessa made it in 2 minutes and 50 seconds, which would have been impressive, except Lux had made it in 45 seconds, and Brock had apparently just slept on the training field because he didn't fit in the bunks anyway. Physical training was a nightmare wrapped in humiliation and sprinkled with public mockery. Briggs! Holloway's voice cut across the field as Tessa struggled through her 15th pull-up. Her arms were screaming. Her shoulders felt like they were filled with broken glass. Is that your maximum effort? Because it looks like you're trying to gently lower yourself into a bath. She gritted her teeth, hauled herself up one more time. 16. Her grip slipped, and she dropped to the ground, landing in a crouch. 16, Holloway announced to nobody in particular. Briggs managed 16 pull-ups. Meanwhile, Brock over there did 112 without breaking a sweat. Quix did 86 using only 2 of his 4 arms because he wanted to challenge himself. Even Lux, who weighs approximately nothing and is made of literal crystal, managed 63. Tessa stood up, wiped sweat from her forehead, and absolutely did not point out that Hicks species had hollow bones and weighed a fraction of what humans did. That would be making excuses, and making excuses was apparently worse than failing. The running course was even more demoralizing. It was a standard 10-kilometer loop around the moon base's exterior training grounds, complete with obstacles, rough terrain, and artificial gravity that fluctuated to simulate different planetary conditions. Tessa finished dead last. By a lot. Lux crossed the finish line in just under 20 minutes, moving so fast that Tessa only caught glimpses of crystalline form blurring past obstacles. Brock took 32 minutes, his massive form somehow navigating the course with surprising agility. Kix clocked in at 28 minutes. Tessa stumbled across the finish line at 49 minutes, legs shaking, lungs burning, vision swimming at the edges. Holloway was waiting for her. Of course he was. 49 minutes, he said, consulting his datapad. Briggs, do you know what the coalition minimum standard is for this course? She knew. 35 minutes, Gunnery Sergeant. 35 minutes. You missed it by 14 minutes. That's not even close. That's not, I almost had it. That's, I'm fundamentally incapable of performing this basic task. Tessa bent over, hands on knees, trying not to throw up. I'll do better tomorrow, Gunnery Sergeant. No, Holloway said flatly. You won't, because you can't. This is your ceiling, Briggs. This is your maximum capability, and it's not good enough. It will never be good enough. He walked away, already barking orders at the other recruits. Tessa straightened up, wiped her mouth, and looked at the course. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow she'd shave off 2 minutes. Maybe 3, if she figured out a better route through the obstacle section. The thing nobody seemed to understand about humans, or about Tessa specifically, was that "you can't" wasn't a statement of fact. It was a challenge, and she'd been hearing it her whole life. Week 1 was a masterclass in creative humiliation. Holloway had apparently made it his personal mission to prove that Tessa didn't belong, and he approached this task with the dedication of an artist. Combat training? She got paired against Brock for hand-to-hand. It lasted 8 seconds before she was flat on her back, staring at the ceiling, pretty sure she'd cracked a rib. Holloway's response was to make her go again, and again, and again. By the 5th round, she'd learned to dodge the initial rush. By the 10th, she'd figured out that Brock's tail was his balance point. By the 15th, she managed to stay on her feet for a full 30 seconds before getting knocked into next week. "Progress," Holloway said, and it sounded like he was chewing glass. "From utterly useless to merely pathetic. Inspiring stuff, Briggs." Weapons qualification was a different kind of disaster. The Coalition used standardized plasma rifles designed to be ergonomic for multiple species morphologies. This meant they were perfectly suited for nobody, and awkward for everybody. Except apparently, Tessa was more awkward than most. "Your stance is wrong," Holloway informed her on day 3. "Your grip is wrong. Your breathing is wrong. I'm starting to suspect your entire existence is wrong." "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant," Tessa replied, because what else was she supposed to say? But here's the thing about weapons. They followed rules. Physics, mathematics, predictable trajectories. Tessa might not be strong or fast, but she could learn patterns. She could calculate angles. She could adjust for recoil and compensate for drift. By the end of week 1, her scores had climbed from catastrophically bad to mediocre, which wasn't good, but it was improvement, and improvement was something. The barracks at night were interesting. Turns out, bunking with multiple alien species came with challenges nobody had really prepared her for. Brock's snoring sounded like a combustion engine dying. Kix didn't sleep at all. Apparently, Olmoth's entered a rest state while still partially conscious, and he spent the nights reorganizing his gear with all 4 hands, creating a constant clicking sound that made sleep nearly impossible. And Lux? Lux glowed in the dark, just faintly, but enough that Tessa felt like she was trying to sleep in a room with a nightlight that occasionally hummed at frequencies that made her teeth ache. But nobody quit. Not even Tessa, despite Holloway's daily predictions of her imminent failure. "You're still here," he observed on day 8, sounding genuinely surprised. "I'll be honest, Briggs, I had you pegged for a 3-day washout. Maximum." "Disappointed, Gunnery Sergeant?" Tessa asked, then immediately regretted it. Holloway's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Oh no, this is better. Watching you fail slowly is much more satisfying than watching you quit quickly. Gives me time to really savor it." Tessa just smiled back. That crooked smile that her mother always said made her look like she was plotting something. Because she was. Holloway had no idea what humanity's real advantage was. It wasn't strength or speed or superior technology. It was spite. Pure, undiluted, bloody-minded spite. The ability to look at impossible odds and say, "Yeah, okay, but watch this." Week 2 started with environmental training, and that's when things got interesting. Week 3 arrived with all the subtlety of a meteor impact, which was fitting because the first major test was survival training in conditions that could charitably be described as actively homicidal. Holloway gathered the platoon in Briefing Room 6, where a holographic display showed a frozen wasteland that looked like someone had taken Antarctica and made it angry. "This," Holloway announced with obvious glee, "is Simulation Protocol Delta 9. You will be dropped into a replicated ice planet environment with minimal supplies. Your objective is to survive for 6 hours, locate the extraction beacon, and signal for pickup. Species with natural cold resistance." He glanced at Brock and 2 other Crexians. "Will have environmental handicaps applied to level the playing field." Tessa studied the hologram. Wind speeds topping 200 kilometers per hour. Ambient temperature of -80 degrees Celsius. Terrain that was equal parts jagged ice formations and hidden crevasses. "Oh, and one more thing," Holloway added, almost as an afterthought. "The simulation includes predator protocols, automated defense drones programmed to hunt you, because if you can't handle a training exercise, you sure as hell can't handle actual combat." The other recruits shifted nervously. Tessa just grinned wider. "Something funny, Briggs?" Holloway zeroed in immediately. "No, Gunnery Sergeant. Just looking forward to it." His eyes narrowed. "We'll see how much you're enjoying yourself when you're hypothermic and being chased by murder bots." Turned out, Tessa enjoyed it quite a bit. The simulation dropped her in a shallow valley surrounded by ice cliffs that groaned and creaked like living things. Wind hit her immediately, even through the thermal suit, Coalition standard issue, designed for moderate cold, but definitely not this. Most recruits would panic. Some did. She could hear scattered comm chatter as people tried to figure out what to do first. Tessa looked up, spotted an overhang about 15 meters away, and started moving. Not running, because running in this terrain was asking to break an ankle. Steady, deliberate steps, testing each footfall before committing her weight. She reached the overhang and started digging. The ice here was different, more compact, less prone to shattering. She could work with this. 30 minutes later, she had a shelter. Not fancy, but functional. A hollow carved into the ice, entrance angled away from prevailing winds, interior just big enough for her to curl up and preserve body heat. Now, for fire. The emergency pack included a thermal starter, but those were designed for standard atmospheric conditions. This cold would drain its power cell in minutes. Useless. But the pack also included signal flares. And signal flares burned hot. Tessa pulled one out, cracked it open carefully, and extracted the combustion compound. Mixed it with shavings from the thermal insulation in her suit, which would keep her less warm, but would burn beautifully. Added fragments of the emergency rations wrapper, which was made from some kind of petroleum-based polymer. The resulting fire was small, smoky, and probably violated a dozen safety regulations. It was also absolutely perfect. 2 hours into the exercise, Tessa was warm, hydrated from melted ice, and studying the terrain map she'd memorized during the briefing. The extraction beacon would be in the center of the simulation zone, which meant crossing approximately 8 kilometers of hostile terrain. Or... She looked up at the ice cliffs, thought about angles and trajectories, and the fact that frozen water was significantly less dense than liquid water. 20 minutes of careful climbing brought her to a vantage point where she could see the entire simulation zone. There, a heat signature roughly 4 kilometers northeast. Had to be the beacon. But between her and the beacon, 3 Predator drones were running search patterns. Tessa watched them for 10 minutes, timing their movements. They were programmed with hunting algorithms, which meant they followed predictable patrol routes. Predictable was exploitable. She started moving, timing her path to slip between search grids. When drone Alpha swung east, she went north. When drone Beta looped back, she dropped into a crevasse and waited. When drone Gamma passed overhead, she was already 200 meters past its sensor range. The extraction beacon sat on a plateau, completely exposed. Suicide to approach directly. So Tessa didn't approach directly. She circled around to the leeward side, where ice formations created natural cover, worked her way closer, using techniques she'd read about in an old mountaineering manual, moving when the wind gusted loudest, freezing when it died down, keeping low and slow. She reached the beacon, activated it, and settled in to wait. The extraction signal went out. Across the simulation zone, other recruits started converging on the location, most of them battered, some injured, all of them looking like they'd fought through hell. Tessa sat cross-legged next to the beacon, eating an emergency ration bar, barely winded. Holloway's face, when he reviewed the timestamps, was absolutely worth every frozen minute. 2 hours and 18 minutes, he said, staring at his datapad like it had personally betrayed him. Briggs completed the course in 2 hours and 18 minutes. Brock had taken 3 hours and 40 minutes, and he had natural cold resistance augmented by his scales. Kix clocked in at 4 hours, 12 minutes. Lux had gone hypothermic and needed medical extraction. How? Holloway demanded. Tessa shrugged. I read about ice climbing once. Seemed applicable. His jaw clenched so hard she could hear his teeth grinding. Holloway's hatred stopped being professional somewhere around week 5, and Tessa started noticing things. Small things at first. Her equipment locker combination changed overnight, without notification. Her training schedule showed different times than what was posted on the main board. Her scores from the weapons qualification disappeared from the central database, forcing her to retest and waste an entire afternoon proving competency she'd already demonstrated. Annoying? Absolutely. But mistakes happened in large organizations. Systems glitched. People made errors. Except the errors only ever happened to her. Week 6 brought tactical simulations, squad-based operations where mixed teams had to complete objectives under fire. Standard military stuff. The kind of training that separated individuals from actual functional units. Tessa got assigned to a team with Brock, Kix, and 2 other recruits. A Hicks named Lux, and a massive slug-like being called Orbix, who communicated through chemical signals that the translation software could barely interpret. Their first mission was straightforward. Infiltrate a mock enemy facility, retrieve intelligence data, extract without being detected by automated defenses. Tessa spent the planning phase listening to everyone else argue about the best approach. Brock wanted a frontal assault. Use his strength to smash through defenses. Kix suggested a multi-pronged attack using his 4 arms to operate equipment simultaneously. Lux advocated for a speed run, moving too fast for sensors to track. Or, Tessa said quietly, we could just walk in the front door. 4 pairs of eyes, well, Kix had 8 eyes technically, but 4 pairs of eyes worth of attention turned to her. Explain, Brock rumbled. Tessa pulled up the facility schematic. Look at the security placement. Sensors, automated guns, pressure plates, all focused on preventing forced entry. But there's a maintenance entrance here. She highlighted a section that only has basic ID verification. We fake credentials. Walk in like we belong there. Grab the data. Walk out. That's cheating, Lux said, their crystalline form refracting light in agitated patterns. That's tactics, Tessa corrected. The objective is to retrieve the data, not to prove how tough we are. Brock considered this, his reptilian features unreadable. Then he laughed. a deep, grinding sound like rocks tumbling down a mountain. I like the way humans think. Very sneaky. They used Tessa's plan. Walked in the front door with forged credentials that Kix manufactured using his superior processing speed. Retrieved the data, while Lux ran interference by creating false sensor readings. Walked out 23 minutes later without firing a single shot. Holloway watched the playback with an expression that could have curdled milk. "You were supposed to demonstrate combat capability," he said flatly. "The objective was intelligence retrieval, Gunnery Sergeant," Tessa replied. "Mission parameters didn't specify method." "Don't get smart with me, Briggs." "Wouldn't dream of it, Gunnery Sergeant." His eyes promised retaliation. Tessa's smile promised she was ready for it. The retaliation came during the zero-gravity hostage rescue simulation. The scenario was nasty. Hostile forces holding coalition civilians in a disabled space station, life support failing, limited time before everyone suffocated. High-stress situation designed to test decision-making under pressure. Tessa's team launched with standard boarding equipment: magnetic boots, short-range weapons, emergency atmosphere units. Everything by the book. Except her equipment malfunctioned the moment they breached the station hull. Magnetic boots failed. She went tumbling through the zero-G corridor, bouncing off walls, completely disoriented. Her weapons targeting system flickered and died. Her comm unit filled with static. Meanwhile, the rest of her team pushed forward, unaware she was having problems because her comm was down and they were focused on the mission clock. Tessa stopped panicking. Panic in zero-G was suicide, and started thinking. She couldn't navigate with magnetic boots. Fine. Humans evolved in gravity, but humans also figured out how to move in zero-G decades before joining the coalition. She'd read about it, studied the techniques. She stopped fighting the tumble and started controlling it. Used wall impacts to redirect trajectory. Spotted a ventilation duct, too small for most species but perfectly sized for a human, and kicked off toward it. The duct system ran throughout the station. She followed it by touch in the darkness, using the vibrations from her team's movement to track their position. Mapped the layout in her head, comparing it to the schematic she'd memorized. The hostiles were holed up in the command center. Her team was preparing to breach through the main entrance, exactly what the enemy expected. Exactly where the defenses would be strongest. But ventilation ducts went everywhere, including the command center. Tessa emerged from a ceiling vent directly above the hostile position, dropped down, being relative in zero-G, and fired her malfunctioning weapon on manual override. The targeting system was dead, but the firing mechanism worked fine, and at this range, she didn't need computer assistance. 3 simulated hostiles down in under 5 seconds. The rest of her team breached moments later to find the situation already resolved. "How did you—" Kix started. "Air ducts," Tessa said simply. "Nobody ever expects air ducts." Brock's rumbling laugh filled the comm. "Humans are terrifying." Holloway's face during the debrief was a masterpiece of suppressed rage. "Your equipment failed." "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant." "Multiple critical systems simultaneously malfunctioned." "Apparently so, Gunnery Sergeant." "And yet you completed the objective anyway." "The mission comes first, Gunnery Sergeant. You taught us that." The other instructors were reviewing the simulation data, murmuring amongst themselves. One of them, a Hicks named Instructor Kell, spoke up. "Gunnery Sergeant, the equipment failure seems statistically improbable. Perhaps we should investigate—" "Equipment fails," Holloway cut him off. "That's why we train, so soldiers can adapt when things go wrong." Briggs adapted. Mission complete. Dismissed. But Tessa caught the look that passed between Kell and another instructor. They'd noticed. They suspected. After the debrief, Brock cornered her in the corridor. Your equipment didn't malfunction. It wasn't a question. Nope, Tessa agreed. Holloway sabotaged it. Also not a question. Probably. Brock's claws flexed, scraping against the metal wall. That is dishonorable. In Crexian culture, we would challenge him to ritual combat for such offense. And you'd win, because you're about 4 times his size and covered in natural armor, Tessa pointed out. But then, you'd get court-martialed for assaulting a superior officer, and Holloway would still be here making everyone else's life miserable. So what do you do? Tessa smiled that crooked smile. I prove he's wrong, about everything, until he can't ignore it anymore. Week 8 brought the marksmanship qualification, the test that would determine whether recruits were combat-ready or needed remedial training. The course was brutal. Targets at varying distances, moving at different speeds, simulating different environmental conditions. Wind, rain, low visibility, high-stress scenarios. Recruits had to hit at least 80% of targets to pass. Most species had advantages. Crexians had predator eyesight. Hicks had reaction speeds that made everything else seem slow. Ulmoths could track multiple targets simultaneously, with their multiple visual processing centers. Humans had binocular vision, pattern recognition, and the ability to throw things accurately, an evolutionary holdover from when their ancestors needed to hit prey with rocks. Tessa stepped up to the firing line, checked her weapon. No sabotage this time, Holloway was watching, and waited for the course to begin. Targets appeared. She fired, and fired, and fired. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. Target acquisition, breath control, trigger squeeze. Every movement economical, efficient, no wasted motion. She'd studied the ballistics data, memorized the weapon's recoil pattern, calculated how plasma bolts traveled through different atmospheric conditions. The other recruits stopped their own qualifications to watch. Brock hit 86%. Excellent score. Quicks managed 91% using predictive algorithms. Outstanding. Lux blazed through at 96%, their crystal form vibrating with pride. Tessa's score flashed on the board, 99.2%. Silence fell across the range. Holloway stared at the scoreboard like it had grown teeth and bitten him. Run it again. Gunnery, Sergeant? I said run it again, Briggs. Obviously a scoring error. Tessa ran it again. 99.4%. Again. 99.1%. The range record, held by some legendary coalition sniper for the past 15 years, was 98.6%. Tessa had just broken it. 3 times. Holloway's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Dismissed, he managed finally. As Tessa walked off the range, Kix fell into step beside her. I calculated the probability of your performance, he said, all forearms gesturing animatedly. Given your previous scores and physiological limitations, the odds were approximately— Don't care about the odds, Tessa interrupted. Only care about results. Behind them, Lux's crystalline laughter chimed like bells. I am beginning to understand why the Coalition accepted humans. You are all completely insane. Thank you, Tessa said. We try. That night, 3 recruits approached her bunk. Brock, Kix, and Lux, her squad, though nobody had made it official. We know Holloway's sabotaging you, Brock said without preamble. Tessa sat up. Do you now? We have evidence, Kix added. I've been monitoring equipment logs. Your gear failures have a 99.8% correlation with his access to the supply systems. We want to help, Lux said. Report him. Get him removed. Tessa looked at the three of them. Different species, different worlds, united by a sense of fairness that apparently transcended biology. I appreciate that, she said carefully. But reporting him won't change anything. He'll claim it was training, testing my adaptability. Command might even agree with him. So what do we do? Brock asked. Tessa's smile went sharp. We gather evidence, real evidence. And when we have enough, I'm going to give him a choice. Gathering evidence turned out to be easier than expected, mostly because Holloway was so convinced of his own invincibility that he'd stopped being careful. Kix set up monitoring protocols using his superior multitasking abilities, tracking every time Holloway accessed equipment databases. Lux used their natural crystalline structure to record visual data. Apparently, Hicks could store information in their molecular lattices like living cameras. Brock just intimidated other instructors into casual conversations where they let slip things they probably shouldn't have. 2 weeks of surveillance produced a damning picture. Holloway hadn't just sabotaged Tessa's equipment, he'd been manipulating her scores, altering training schedules, and creating situations designed to make her fail. 17 separate incidents, all documented, all traceable directly back to him. The question was what to do with it. We take this to command, Kix insisted during one of their midnight planning sessions in the barracks. They'll have to investigate, court-martial him. Maybe, Tessa said. Or maybe they'll bury it. Holloway's decorated, highly respected. I'm a nobody recruit who's been here 3 months. Then what? Lux's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. We just let him continue? Tessa pulled up Holloway's service record on her datapad. She'd been studying it for weeks now, piecing together the story behind the hatred. Battle of Proxima Station. 6 years ago. Coalition forces defending against pirate raiders. Holloway's unit took heavy casualties. 38 soldiers lost. The survivors' reports all mentioned the same thing. Human Command made a tactical call that Holloway disagreed with. Ordered a retreat when he wanted to hold position. His unit got caught in the crossfire during withdrawal. He blames humanity for their deaths, Tessa said quietly. He thinks we're reckless, arrogant, unworthy of being in the coalition military. Brock's claws scraped against the metal bunk frame. That doesn't justify what he's doing to you. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. Tessa looked up at her squad, her friends, though she'd never said it out loud. I'm going to confront him, privately. Give him a choice. That's suicide, Kix said flatly. That's opportunity, Tessa corrected. Look, Holloway's a decorated soldier. He's also a broken man who's been carrying rage for 6 years. Maybe, if I confront him directly, he'll listen. Or maybe he'll try to crush me completely. And that's when we use the evidence. Lux's form flickered between colors. And if he physically attacks you? Tessa's smile was pure predator. Then I defend myself, and we make absolutely sure it's all on record. She found Holloway in his office 2 days later, after the evening training session. Knocked once, waited for permission to enter. He looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his features, before settling back into the usual contempt. Briggs, unless the base is actively exploding, I can't imagine what would bring you to my office. Tessa stepped inside, let the door close behind her. Set a data chip on his desk. That contains evidence of 17 separate incidents of equipment sabotage, score manipulation, and deliberate endangerment of a recruit under your command, she said calmly. All traceable to your access codes, all time-stamped and verified. Holloway's hand moved toward the chip, then stopped. His eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, recruit? It's information, Gunnery Sergeant. What you do with it is up to you. I could have you court-martialed for insubordination, for making false accusations against a superior officer. You could try, Tessa agreed, but the evidence is solid. My squad helped me gather it. A Krexian, an Ulmoth, and a Hicks. 3 different species, all willing to testify. That's going to be hard to dismiss as human prejudice. Holloway stood slowly, and Tessa was reminded that before he was a drill sergeant, he'd been a combat soldier. His movements had the controlled precision of someone who knew exactly how much damage he could inflict. "You have no idea what you're doing," he said quietly. "No idea what war actually costs." "Then tell me," Tessa shot back. "Because I've read your service record, Gunnery Sergeant. Proxima Station. 38 casualties. Human Command ordered a retreat, and your unit paid the price." His hand slammed down on the desk hard enough to make the data chip jump. "Those soldiers died because your species thinks tactics are suggestions and casualties are acceptable losses. We could have held that position. We could have—" "You could have lost everyone," Tessa interrupted. "I read the after-action reports, all of them. The position was indefensible. Human Command saw what you couldn't. That retreat was the only way to save anyone at all. You weren't there." "No, I wasn't. But I understand loss, Gunnery Sergeant. I understand blaming someone when things go wrong because it's easier than accepting that sometimes people die and there's nothing anyone could have done to stop it." Holloway's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: rage, pain, something that might have been grief. "So what now? You blackmail me into being nice to you?" "No," Tessa said. "I challenge you." The office went dead silent. "Combat trial," Tessa continued. "You and me. No holds barred. In front of base command and anyone else who wants to watch. If I win, you admit to the sabotage and resign. If you win, I drop out, and you can keep this evidence as proof that you were right about humans all along." Holloway stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're serious?" "Completely. Briggs, I outweigh you by 50 kilos. I have 15 years of combat experience. I've won tournament championships in 3 different sectors." "I know. I read your file, remember?" "I will destroy you." Tessa's crooked smile was back. "Probably. But here's what you don't understand about humans, Gunnery Sergeant. We're not the strongest species. We're not the fastest. We're not even particularly smart compared to some of the others. But we are the most stubborn. And sometimes stubbornness is enough." Holloway sat back down, studying her with new intensity. "Why? Why does this matter so much to you?" "Because you told me I'd never be a soldier," Tessa said simply. "And I really, really hate being told what I can't do." He laughed, an actual laugh this time, with real humor in it. "You know what? Fine. Tomorrow, 1800 hours, Combat Deck 3. I'll even make it official through proper channels, so nobody can claim it was off the books." "Appreciated, Gunnery Sergeant." "Briggs, I meant what I said. I'm going to destroy you." "You can try, Gunnery Sergeant. You can absolutely try." Word spread through the base like wildfire. By 1800 hours the next day, Combat Deck 3 was packed. Command officers, instructors from other platoons, recruits from every training cycle. Everyone wanted to see the human recruit who'd challenged Holloway to single combat. Tessa stood in her corner of the mat, stretching muscles that were already sore from morning training. Across from her, Holloway was doing the same, his movements economical and practiced. Brock pushed through the crowd, Kix and Lux trailing behind him. "Last chance to back out," the Krexian rumbled. "No shame in it." "Yes, there is," Tessa corrected. "And anyway, I've got a plan. Does your plan involve not getting killed? Lux asked, their crystalline form refracting light in worried patterns. It involves not losing. Close enough. The referee, a neutral instructor Tessa didn't recognize, called them to center mat. Rules are simple. Full contact combat. Fight ends with knockout, submission, or inability to continue. Medical team is standing by. Any questions? Holloway shook his head. Tessa did the same. Then begin. Holloway moved first, closing the distance with professional efficiency. No wasted movement, no telegraphing his intentions. His first strike was a jab aimed at her solar plexus, testing her reflexes. Tessa slipped it by centimeters, felt the air displacement as his fist passed. Didn't counter, just created distance. They circled. Holloway feinted left, came in right, with a combination that would have ended the fight if it connected. Tessa blocked the first two strikes, ate the third one on her shoulder, better than her face, and rolled with the impact. The crowd murmured. This wasn't the immediate beatdown they'd expected. Holloway pressed the advantage, throwing combinations that forced Tessa into a defensive posture. She gave ground steadily, blocking what she could, deflecting the rest, taking hits on non-critical areas when she had no choice. 2 minutes in, her lip was split and bleeding. 3 minutes, she was pretty sure her ribs were bruised. 4 minutes, her left eye was swelling shut. But she was still standing, still moving, still fighting. And Holloway was getting frustrated. Tessa could see it in his technique. Strikes coming harder but less precise. Combinations getting more aggressive but more predictable. He was used to opponents who either matched his strength or folded quickly. Tessa was doing neither. She was surviving. And that's when she remembered something Brock had told her during training. In Crexian combat philosophy, we say the warrior who controls their breathing controls the fight. Holloway overcommitted to a finishing blow. Muscle memory from old battles, old trauma, making him sloppy. Tessa didn't dodge. She moved into it, taking the hit, but getting inside his guard where strength didn't matter. Crexian joint lock from Broke. Olmoth pressure point from Kicks. Hicks speed burst from Lux. Everything her squad taught her, compressed into 3 seconds of controlled chaos. Then, pure human spite. A headbutt that split her own forehead open, followed by an uppercut that connected with his jaw with surgical precision. The crack echoed across the silent deck. Holloway dropped. Tessa swayed, vision blurring, then sat down hard beside him. Medical rushed in. The crowd erupted. Later, in medical, Holloway woke to find Tessa reading beside his bed, jaw wired shut. She looked up. For what it's worth, I didn't want to hurt you. He grabbed a datapad, typed slowly. You proved your point. We both did, Tessa said. Humans belong. But so does remembering the cost. He nodded once, understanding, if not forgiveness. 3 months later, Tessa graduated top of her class. Holloway watched from the crowd, jaw healed, transferred to advisory. She'd never be just a soldier. She'd become something better. Proof that stubborn beats strong every single time.